Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of your sources and, well, we provide the critical shortcut to being well-informed.
And today, we have a really interesting one.
We do. We're on a very focused mission today, diving deep into the developer workflow to understand what seems like a monumental decision.
It really is.
We're asking why a highly experienced .NET developer would switch from the industry giant, Visual Studio, to the challenger, JetBrains writer.
It's so much more than just a software switch, isn't it? It's about abandoning years of professional muscle memory.
Exactly.
For any developer, their IDE, their integrated development environment, is where they live. It's their office.
All day, every day.
Right. And if that environment introduces any friction at all, slow loading, weird bugs, making you switch windows all the time, the cost to your productivity is just, it's massive.
So the sources we're looking at today are from a developer, Emmanuel Bartolesi, who made this exact very high-stakes transition.
And high stakes is the right way to put it.
I mean, to really get the level of loyalty we're talking about, the author says he has an actual tattoo of the VS Code logo.
A tattoo! That's commitment.
It is. And while he does say VS Code is not the right tool for his main .NET work, that little detail just underscores how serious this search was for him. He wasn't just casually looking for an alternative.
No, he was looking to fix real workflow pain points. The sources frame this as a genuine trade-off. You've got years of deep familiarity with VS on one side. And then on the other, you have this promise from Writer of a modern, fast, integrated architecture.
And his daily tool steps used to be all Visual Studio. But Writer came in and just earned that spot.
It earned it by systematically eliminating all those tiny focus-breaking annoyances.
Okay, let's unpack that. The journey apparently started with just curiosity, but it turned into appreciation pretty fast.
Yeah.
So what was that foundational reason to walk away from all that comfort?
It really centers on two things: cross-platform power and just raw performance, especially when things get complex. So first up, Writer offers seamless cross-platform consistency. The author uses both Windows and a Mac.
Right, which is more and more common.
Exactly. And Writer just runs identically on both. It completely eliminates that headache of, feature gaps or weird workarounds depending on which machine you're on.
So you can just carry your entire workflow and all your settings with you. No friction.
Precisely.
That sounds like a huge advantage right away, especially for modern teams.
Yeah.
But what about the real test handling, a massive .NET solution? That's historically been VS's home turf.
And that's where it really shines. The source highlights Writer's ability to open these huge solutions incredibly quickly and, more importantly, to maintain that speed.
Maintain it during what kind of tasks?
During the really resource-intensive stuff, like if you're refactoring code across thousands of files or you're running deep code analysis on a huge code base, Writer just stays snappy. It doesn't get sluggish in the way Visual Studio sometimes can.
I know this wasn't a casual switch for him, though.
Yeah.
He mentions running them side by side for a while.
He did, yeah.
But he kept falling back to VS, and he says it was out of sheer laziness. That inertia is so hard to beat.
It's just muscle memory, right?
So how did he finally force the switch?
It took a clean break, a really decisive one. When he got a new laptop, he made a commitment. He installed only VS Code and Writer.
So Visual Studio was just completely left off the machine.
Completely. He removed the old crutch. And that act alone really shows you how compelling the speed and the consistency benefits must have been.
That sounds incredibly high risk, though. I mean, there must have been a productivity dip at first, right? Learning all the new shortcuts, the UI.
Oh, for sure. The documentation implies the learning curve was steep, but the immediate speed improvements they offset that frustration really quickly.
So the payoff was instant.
Pretty much. Think about it. You gain back, say, 30 seconds every time you open a project, maybe 5 seconds every time you run an inspection. Those seconds turn into minutes very, very quickly. It justifies the time you invest.
All right, let's move beyond just speed. How does a tool earn that level of commitment? What are the quality of life improvements that justify throwing away years of habits?
Okay, so this is the core value proposition. It's all about integrated power.
What do you mean by that?
Writer is made by JetBrains. They're the same people who make ReSharper. Now, for listeners who might not be deep in the .NET world, ReSharper is basically the gold standard for code analysis and refactoring.
It's like a super intelligent Copilot for your code.
A perfect way to put it. It finds bugs, it suggests cleanups, it automates these really complex code changes for you.
So with Visual Studio, developers often have to pay for and install that tool separately, right?
Exactly. But Writer ships with ReSharper-level inspections and quick fixes built in, by default.
So no extra plugins to manage.
Right. And maybe more importantly, you eliminate the performance hit that can come from layering a heavy extension on top of your IDE. You get all that power, but it's baked right into the core architecture.
That just makes sense from an efficiency standpoint. What about handling different kinds of projects? That can get messy.
The sources say solution management is just friction-free. It handles .NET Core, ASP.NET, Windows Forms, multi-targeted projects, all in the same window, no complaints.
And the debugging experience.
Robust and really, really responsive. Setting breakpoints, inspecting variables, attaching to a process, and the big one, editing code while you're debugging.
Yeah.
It all feels instantaneous. It just avoids that little lag that can totally break your concentration.
And reducing that context switching is always the name of the game.
Precisely. It even has a built-in terminal and a task runner. So a developer can automate builds and tests right inside the IDE with a few keystrokes. You never have to jump out to a command prompt. It keeps you locked in.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. The sources talk about 5 hidden gems or superpowers that really change the daily workflow. Let's focus on the ones that give the biggest productivity punch.
Right, the game changers. I'd say the #1 feature is the dynamic code analysis combined with its quick fixes.
So the IDE is just constantly checking your code in the background.
Constantly. It's flagging bugs, code smells, style violations as you type. But the real magic is a single shortcut. Alt plus Enter.
Alt plus Enter.
You hit that, and it brings up this context-aware menu of options. Instant fixes, refactoring suggestions, reformats. You can address a problem immediately without ever breaking your rhythm.
That sounds incredibly powerful, but also maybe a little distracting. And I imagine that constant analysis could just crush a laptop battery if you're on the go.
And that's a nuance they've handled. The source specifically points out you can easily disable the analysis from the file menu.
Ah, so if you're on a train or trying to save power.
Exactly. It shows a real thoughtfulness in the design. The tool works for you, not the other way around.
Okay, superpower number 2. What's the big one for navigation? Because finding your way through a huge old code base that can eat up so much time.
This one is maybe the biggest time saver of all. It's the search everywhere window.
And how do you trigger that?
With a super shortcut. Shift-Shift. Just tap Shift twice.
Shift. Got it.
And this one unified box pops up that searches everything instantly. Files, classes, symbols, even settings and menu commands. So if you're trying to find some method buried 4 layers deep in a project.
Which, for our listeners, is a daily thing.
A constant thing. Shift turns minutes of clicking and scrolling into literally seconds.
Shift. That's sticky knowledge.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of things you usually have to bolt on, another one is an HTTP client. Most devs jump out to Postman or Insomnia for that.
Right. And Rider addresses that context switch, but it does it in a way that's actually huge for team collaboration.
How so?
It has a built-in HTTP client. And it's not just a simple little tool. It lets you create these special .http files.
Okay.
And you save those files directly inside your solution right alongside your source code.
But why bother? Everyone uses Postman. It's so feature-rich.
Yeah.
Is the Rider client actually good enough for real work?
The main advantage isn't about having every single feature Postman has. It's about team consistency and version control.
Ah, I see where you're going with this.
By saving those .http files in your solution, all your API requests, your variables, your basic tests, they become part of your source code. So when a teammate pulls the latest from the repo...
Think of the exact same test request.
Exactly. It kills the whole, well, it works on my machine problem when you're dealing with APIs. It centralizes that critical testing info.
That is a genuine team superpower. Okay, moving on to standardization. You also mentioned strong integration with .editor config files. For anyone listening who hasn't used those, why is that so important for a team?
So an editor config file is just a simple text file that defines your team's coding rules. Indent size, line length, where your brackets go, stuff like that.
And it works across different editors.
Right. Rider has really strong visual enforcement of these rules, and it even has a built-in visual editor for tweaking them. The source gives a great little anecdote about this.
Oh, yeah.
The author just copies a standard .editor config file that was shared by his friend Marco Minerva and drops it into his projects. And instantly, the team's style is enforced. It makes consistency trivial.
Fantastic. And the last one was about data tools. That gap between application code and the database can be pretty intimidating for developers who aren't DBAs.
It can. And Rider bridges that gap with its integrated database explorer. It connects to all the major databases, lets you run queries.
Standard stuff.
But here's the critical part. It can preview your LINQ queries mapped to the database schema.
What does that actually mean?
It means a developer can write their simple, object-oriented query in C#, and before they even run it, Writer shows them the actual, often very complex SQL code that will be generated and sent to the database.
Oh, that's huge. So you can spot performance problems before they happen.
Exactly. It helps non-database experts write much faster, more efficient queries. It's a fantastic learning tool.
So we've covered this deep integration, but let's talk about the modern edge. You can't really discuss productivity now without talking about AI. How does Writer handle GitHub Copilot?
It's very tightly integrated. The author calls it a genuine productivity boost, especially for scaffolding out complex classes or just learning a new API quickly.
And the suggestions are good.
They're very context-aware, and they appear right in line as you type. And crucially, it works seamlessly across all the languages in a typical .NET project.
So not just C#.
Not just C#. You get unified AI help in your C#, your JavaScript, TypeScript, and even your Razor files for the front end. It's all within the same environment.
That seamlessness really solidifies its modern appeal. But we have to talk about the flip side. No tool is perfect. What are the key drawbacks people need to consider before making a switch like this?
The first one is the most obvious: cost.
Right. Visual Studio has a very powerful free community edition.
It does. Writer requires a commercial license for professional use. There's a free version for students and open source work, but for a business, that cost has to be factored into the budget.
And is that trade-off worth it? Is the efficiency gain worth that annual fee?
For a developer or a team that really prioritizes peak performance and stability, especially if they're not just on Windows, the source strongly suggests yes. I mean, the built-in ReSharper features alone often justify the cost. Many developers were already paying for that as a separate tool, and sometimes it even slowed VS down. With Writer, the cost buys you speed and integration.
What about the huge ecosystem Visual Studio has built over decades? All those extensions.
That's the second big drawback, the extension gap. JetBrains has a robust plugin market for sure, but some really niche or very specific Visual Studio extensions might be missing.
So if your whole workflow depends on one specific proprietary VS extension,
you absolutely need to check for a replacement first. That's a very realistic hurdle.
The UI change and maybe OS dependency have to be factors too.
Absolutely. That's the third drawback. There's an adjustment period for the UI. But more critically, some of the very Windows-specific features, especially for older .NET workloads or really deep Azure integrations, might not have perfect parity with the native VS experience.
And finally, there's the organizational barrier. Sometimes it's just not up to you.
And that's often the biggest non-technical roadblock. If your company has standardized on Visual Studio, maybe for licensing reasons or specific IT setups, using Writer might be unsupported, or even just discouraged. The best tool in the world doesn't help if your team can't use it.
This has been a fascinating deep dive. I think the core takeaway for you, the listener, is that Writer offers this modern cross-platform performance and a feature set that's so deeply integrated.
Yeah.
That key shortcuts like Alt+Enter for fixes and Shift+Shift for navigation can fundamentally change the way you code. And that's compelling enough for even seasoned VS developers to ditch years of muscle memory.
And if we connect that back to the bigger picture, the choice isn't just about a feature checklist. It's about flow. It's about whether the baked-in, friction-free productivity you get from a tool like Writer outweighs sticking with an organizational standard or relying on niche extensions you've bolted onto an older system.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? When you see features like that internal HTTP client, saving files directly into your source control, how is the very definition of an IDE going to change? Are developers going to start prioritizing these integrated team-focused features over using a bunch of separate external tools?
Will the IDE become the single centralized hub for not just development, but for testing and documentation too?
Something for you to consider as you optimize your next project. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.